I received my first church wound when I was 19 years old. Some of you have heard parts of this story before. I was raised in a church. I was told that I had gifts and skills for the ministry. I went to church camp. I was given leadership roles. I was able to go to college and study religion and have money and scholarship given to me by the church. I felt that God was calling me to something wonderful and great. And then at the age of 19, as I started to discover more of who I was, I suddenly realized that the same church was taking all that away from me. I was no longer going to be allowed to continue that calling to become a pastor in that denomination because the denomination did not ordain LGBT persons. I felt like everything was taken from me. And in the beginning, I conflated what the church was doing to me with God. I thought God felt the same way about me as the church structure and the people did. Over time, this particular church wound was able to do some healing, mostly because I found the United Church of Christ, our denomination. I was able to be surrounded by a structure and a people that welcomed me as I was, no matter where I was on life's journey, that affirmed my gifts for ministry, and that said that I did have a place and a purpose and a calling. That was my first church wound. For the most part, it is healed because of the love that I received. I think there are still parts of that wound that are not healed and that will not be healed until the United Methodist Church decides to ordain LGBT persons and welcome them fully. But until that day, for the most part, that wound inside of me is mostly healed. The second church wound I received happened at my last congregation. And I learned a lot about the ways that we can wound each other within church. I had known that clergy were given a great power when they were called to be part of the church, and that over the history of the church, clergy have abused that power. There are scandals that we hear about all throughout the news, the Catholic Church, and abuse that has happened. There are many ways in which clergy can betray that trust that congregations give to us, and that can cause a wound. I also knew that persons within congregations can wound each other. Conflicts arise, as they always will, in healthy places. But if those conflicts do not resolve themselves, we can remain wounded. And I have seen that happen. I also realized that congregations can wound clergy. This happened to me in the most loving and welcoming and wonderful church, and I still have that opinion of my last church. I love it with my entire being and my heart. And because we were in a relationship together, we had the opportunity to hurt each other. When I first arrived, after my first year there, I had asked for my annual review as a staff person. And I was told that the church did not have a tradition of having an annual review for the clergy. My second year happened, and there was no review. And 2.5 years into my pastorate there, I experienced a brief time in my own life, personally. I had been with my partner for 7 years, and we decided that it was time for us to separate. On the outside, that separation looked amicable, but of course I had parts of myself that I did not show to other people and everyone else. I was to be caretaking for everyone else, and I didn't want them to have to take care of me. Inside of myself, I was experiencing a deep depression and a huge grief and a transition moment. And I wasn't fully there. I didn't have the same spark in my eye. I didn't take care of people in the same way that I had been. And the people felt that. And they felt that I was not doing my job to the best of my ability. They didn't know why it was happening. They didn't put two and two together. And so they called for an annual review 2.5 years into my pastorate there. I felt in some ways that I was being kicked when I was knocked down. But I also realized I was able to heal from that experience in my life, that I was doing the best that I could do at the time, and that the people were doing the best that they could do at the time. I stayed there for 4 more years, and I healed and they healed because we remained in relationship with each other. And that's what happens when you love each other and you stay in relationship with each other. You have times of wounding and times of conflict, but if you're able to forgive each other, you're able to heal. When the next year came around, I asked for my own annual review. I wanted that to become a tradition and not a surprise. Over this past month, I've been meeting with people face to face and hearing their personal stories. And the last 8 people that I have met with in both congregations have had a similar thread run through their stories. And it's this thread of being wounded by the church. I felt that God was calling me to preach on this topic. Not all of the wounds looked exactly the same. Some people felt that they had been wounded because they are LGBT, and the churches that they had come from had told them that they were going to hell, that they were sick and sinful, that they needed to change who they were, and they were shunned and kicked out of the church and leadership positions and their spiritual home and community. Some people I talked to had children who were LGBT, and the church shunned their family because of that. Or someone who has been and experienced a divorce in a church that does not approve of that. Some of the stories I heard from persons at both churches had experienced a church wound in 2 of the most inclusive, welcoming churches that we have, in my opinion. Church of the Open Arms and Cathedral Folk. Some people have experienced wounds in our own midst. This past Friday night, I was with friends watching RuPaul's Drag Race All-Stars. There was about 15 LGBT persons in the room. And after we finished watching, I said, I'm working and meditating upon this sermon, and I wondered if you would allow me to ask you 2 questions. So everyone turned to me, and I said, have you in this room ever experienced a church wound? And if so, has it been healed? Not everyone spoke, but many did. And they took time within this living room to tell their own story. And those who did speak, sadly, had experienced a church wound. Many of the ones that I've just talked about. As for the question about has it been healed, except for one person in that room that attends a church, the others have found themselves in exile. They don't feel that they can walk into a church because they see churches as places as filled with people who are judgmental and that have hurt them. They said that they don't feel that way necessarily about God, that they feel they can have a relationship with God without having a relationship or a spiritual home base or community. But when they talked about it at greater length, they said, I don't really practice my faith. I'm not reminded to do so on a weekly basis and do that around people and rituals. When things get really tough and hard, I ask for God's help, but I do feel guilty because I don't practice that relationship other times in my life. I began to wonder if everyone has a church wound. So I called up my very good friend, who was straight and white and male and married, and a pastor within the church, and I said, have you experienced a church wound? And he said yes and no. He said, no, the church has not wounded me personally because it has catered to every part of my identity. But, Kayla, I love you, and I know the church has wounded you, and that hurts me. Scripture today comes from the book of Jeremiah. Jeremiah is the longest book in the Bible. He was born during a very important time in the life of the Hebrew people. He was called at a young age to become a prophet. And a prophet is a person who speaks truth to power, a person who says what they see without all the niceties, a person that God calls to reflect on the way that the people are living their spiritual lives or not living their spiritual lives, and to bring them to attention of what might be coming down the pipeline if we continue to stray from God. Jeremiah had been born after many things had happened in the life of the Hebrew people. They had already become a people with Father Abraham and Mother Sarah. During that time, they had experienced a famine, and the people had migrated to Egypt where there was food. Over the generations, they lived there, they set their families there, and over time, the Hebrew people became enslaved. Moses was called from a burning bush in God to bring release to the captives. He went and led the people out of Egypt, through the Red Sea, through a wandering in the desert for 40 years, up to a mountain where they received the Ten Commandments, and the people recommitted themselves to being God's people and living a spiritual life. Jeremiah was born after the people had already recommitted themselves. They had been ruled by judges and by kings, but around this time in their history, they had begun to wander and stray from that spiritual life. They were not putting their relationship with God as a value and as a priority. They were worshiping other things that were not God's, money and fame and fortune, and wandering away from their relationship with God. And that's where our scripture comes from for today. Jeremiah is sad. He's talking about seeing his people as brokenhearted. He's receiving a message from God of sad times to come. Soon after Jeremiah speaks these words, the kingdom of Babylon comes and overtakes Jerusalem and the temple, and the people begin a very painful exile. They're taken away from their spiritual home base, and they're living in a faraway place, far from their promised land and their people, and their practices and their rituals and their traditions. I felt that way when I listened to people's stories over these few months, that many people are living in exile, away from their spiritual home base, the home base that brought them up and that they found comfort within, that now either shunned them or their wounds were so hurtful that they didn't feel that they could return. On some level, I wanted to be able to come to you with a step-by-step instruction manual for how to heal church wounds. I thought that I might be able to Google how to heal a regular wound and spiritualize that, and that would work. It started to work. At first, one of the first things that they say to do when you have a wound is to clear it out with a mild solution so that you cannot continue to have an irritation that could cause an infection. I thought, well, that makes sense. If you are in a situation that is going to cause an infection to your soul or your spirit, if you are being told that who you are is not okay, and if that infects your mind and your beliefs about yourself, you have to get that out of there. But as I started to read on, I realized that there are lots of instructions for healing a wound. There's Western medicine, there's Eastern medicine, there's indigenous and shamanic practices, and that no exact methodology is going to heal every wound, and that some wounds heal differently, and some wounds never heal. We die with them. On some level, I wanted the answer to how to heal this wound to be, because I'm a pastor of 2 amazing churches, I wanted the answer to be, well, just come to our churches. And that will be the healing balm in Gilead. And it has been for many people over these years. Coming to our churches has been a healing balm for many, but it's not the answer for everyone. In our contemporary first reading this evening, we heard about Jesus' wounds and how he uses his wounds as an authority. Jesus received his own wounds, his own church, temple, synagogue wounds. At first, after he was baptized and he came out of the desert, after being tempted, he began teaching and preaching in the synagogues and the temples. And finally, he got around to teaching in Nazareth, which is where he was from. He stood there and the scroll was unrolled and he read out of Isaiah and he proclaimed all these wonderful things that the people had hoped for and wished for: release to the captives, recovery of sight to the blind. But the people in Nazareth had heard about all the miracles that he'd been doing everywhere else. And they thought that they were more chosen because he came from there. And that they were going to receive even more than everyone else. He set them straight. Well, he told them that that wasn't the case with the situation. They were not better than or higher up or more deserving of God's love than everyone else. And they didn't like hearing that. And so what did they do? But they ran him out of the synagogue to the end of town, almost off a cliff. And I wonder if you think Jesus would have had a church wound from that experience. Can you imagine? He didn't stop there. He continued to meet with people in spiritual community, and most times he preached from then on outdoors, on hillsides and in boats, in gardens. He let his wounds be an authority for gathering other people who had been wounded together and to teach them and build them up in a spiritual way. When we are wounded, we are a victim. But if we continue to live out of that victim archetype and make it part of our identity, and we continue to elicit sympathy because it feels so good when people sympathize with us, we get stuck in a victim archetype. That's what our reading talked about today. To be more Jesus-like, we can drag our wounds into the Easter story. We can open the graves and rise from them, carrying burdens forward with each other. That's why it's so healing to be part of a support group, because you share your wound and you realize you're not the only one, you're not alone. When we gather together with our wounds and we share the load, we have them. We don't carry the whole thing by ourselves. Reconnecting with spiritual community is one way that Jesus taught us to continue having a relationship with the divine and the divine inside of each one. I was not able to come up with a fail-safe plan for healing our church wounds, but I did reflect on some things that do help and heal. For some, it takes time. For some, it takes patience. For some, it takes therapy. Grace is a wonderful healer. Forgiveness is the biggest one I know, almost the biggest one I know. Jesus himself, having literal wounds in his hands and his feet, said, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do." We do the best that we can with the time of what we have. And we all make mistakes. But oftentimes when we get hurt and when we get wounded, we want the other person to hurt. We want them to feel how we feel. We want them to pay and to suffer and to experience punishment because we hurt. But forgiveness is about letting go of that. Too often, if we are not able to experience forgiveness, our wounds and our pain and our anger become like a toxic poison that we keep drinking, and we keep wounding ourselves from the inside out. So forgiveness is something that is healing for ourselves as well as for others. The biggest healer of church wounds, of course, is love. Love is the biggest healer that we have. And practicing love is practicing healing. Hurt people hurt people. It's a phrase that I've heard before. People people that are hurt go on to continue to hurt others. The cycle continues back and forth. People continue to stay in exile. But if we're able to start our journey toward healing, I know that one sermon doesn't fix it all, but we are part of the place